So that means Cal advances 2-0 to the next round, and he's definitely one of the strong up-and-coming Protoss players. I'm very sad to see Kwanro go out this early. I kind of hoped for him to continue on, but Protoss is not his best, so it had to be expected.
I have to say, first of all, well, a great game, obviously. I think that was really great play by Cal, and even though I'm not a huge Protoss fan, I was very impressed by that, especially by his adaptation in the middle of the game, the moment he saw those Zerglings, because really, that was psychic by him. He had that air defense up, and it was just like he knew that Kwanro was going to switch to Mutalisks, and Kwanro doing the obvious thing there. I think Kwanro should have stuck to what he was doing. He should have stuck to making Hydras and Lurkers. I didn't think he needed to invest. I mean, he built about 9 Mutalisks at least, and I think that's 900 minerals. That's a lot of resources to spend, plus gas, whatever. So that's a lot of resources to spend, which he could have had a much stronger ground force early on and been able to pressure his opponent. And those Mutalisks were not effective. Had he had a stronger ground force, he would have been able to prevent Cal from taking that third expansion, that the Nexus outside his main, which he tried to do later on with the Lurkers, but he didn't have anything to back up those Lurkers, and that attack came too little too late. And the other thing was that Cal didn't have his observer out, so I think Cal's observer came relatively late, and the reason it came late was because he was getting anti-air, because he anticipated those Mutalisks. So really, Cal showing almost a sixth sense, brilliant strategy by him. Kwanro, I feel, only has himself to blame because of his choice of strategy on Blue Storm. He chose a bad strategy on Blue Storm. That was a map he could have and should have won, and then he could have expected a loss on Katrina, which is a very heavily Protoss favored map, and that's exactly what has happened. And I think he could have taken Blue Storm, he didn't, and once he did, once he gave the initiative up to Cal, he was always going to be struggling, and in this game Cal really showed what he's made of, and I'm excited to see a player coming up with such a strong game sense.
Yeah, I think the main reason, not the main reason, but Kwanro actually did get a little too greedy when he took those 2 expansions, both at the same time. I think that was one of the main reasons he lost, because he didn't have enough minerals. 300 of those minerals could have went to Sunkens in like 3 or 4 Sunkens, and that would have saved off one of those bases. But yeah, he lost both hatcheries just because he overextended himself there, and that was probably one of the main reasons he did lose most of his economy. And then he lost also that the third expansion Kwanro had. Sorry about that. It kept getting attacked, and it was brilliant on him sorry about my mic. It was brilliant of him switching to Mutalisk, but then eventually Archons are the Mutalisk killer basically, and he did have his observer out, and at that point it was pretty much shifted into Cal's favor, and slowly Cal did take the lead and he assured his victory in the game. But overall, GG.
Yeah. I want to actually ask Molchap on this. I want to ask Molchap about this thing that Combat just said. Combat just said that it was brilliant of Kwanro to switch to Mutalisk. I thought that was what really killed him in the game, that switch to Mutalisk, because Cal sort of anticipated it. I mean, Cal had his air defense waiting when those Mutalisks arrived, so he completely and utterly anticipated that Kwanro was going to make that switch. I felt that that's what killed the game for Kwanro. I mean, obviously, the hatcheries came into play later on when he did overextend himself. But do you feel that the Mutalisk was a good choice by Kwanro, or do you think that it was one of the factors that cost him, Noah?
Well, I think it was probably I mean it was good on both parts, because like he said, if he scouted the +1 weapon, so he knew there was going to be a lot of zealots, so switching over to Mutalisks was kind of wise in that sense, because he wouldn't know that Kwanro was going to do that. So he wouldn't know that Cal was going to get those Archons so quickly. Although I guess it's fairly common to see Archons accompanying some zealots, but thinking about their first game, Cal did kind of the same thing. He went for that +1 and the speed legs, and then he pushed out pretty quick. And so if Cal had done the same thing, then Kwanro would have caught him completely off guard with coming out with zealots, and he would have raped him with Mutalisks. So I don't think it was a bad choice on Kwanro's part, excepting the fact that Cal just kind of outthought him and thought another step ahead of him in that sense, and was able to counter it before his counter even happened.
Yeah, the more and more we discuss this, the more my respect for Cal as a player grows. I have to say, maybe Kwanro seems to have been influenced a lot, obviously, by what happened in the last game, and Combat, is that even more credit to Cal's favor, that he first of all took the previous game obviously into account, and therefore instead of going full on zealots, got that air defense up really early, and obviously had to invest a lot in it. And had Kwanro not switched the Mutalisk, that might have ended up costing Cal in the end. But I mean, how much brilliance really was there from Cal Combat? First of all, in anticipating and not repeating what he did in the first game, since Kwanro would be anticipating that, and B, having that air defense up to really just let those Mutalisks be completely ineffective.
Yeah, their conscience seriously played a big part in this, and again, I'm not sure if either player got psyched out or anything, but the Mutalisk was a good state. In standard ZVP, it's normal to switch to Mutalisk when you see a strategy like that. But the thing that the Mutalisk did cost him the game. The reason for that being is because of the lack of the micro with the Mutalisk. If the Mutalisk were micro a little bit better, as you saw in that game, lots of Mutalisks died from the Archons when they could have easily been used. Like, he did get early hive, like relatively early hive, and he could have used those. Sure, he did have Coursers, but he could have morphed them into Guardians, and that could have done a lot of damage also if he just kept those Mutalisks alive, because they pretty much were wasted and they didn't actually do that much damage. They took down like what, a few probes, a few cannons, and a few zealots, but that's basically it. Yeah, Cal being he's basically an upcoming player, and I'm pretty sure he'll be the new Protoss vs Zerg. Well, again, all his matchups are pretty decent, but I think his Protoss vs Zerg is pretty good, and the way he's retaliated to what Kwanro did, I'm pretty sure that was pure brilliance, and props to Kwanro, sorry, Cal, and both players played a good game, but Cal just outthought him and microed everything than Kwanro in every single way, though.
Yeah, it might have been a little different. Might have been different if
superlative play definitely from. No, I'm going to ask you. Actually, I was going to ask you a question, but go ahead.
So I was going to say it might have been a little bit different if Kwanro had instead. I think it probably would have been better if he'd flown all the way down south and like migrating birds with giant teeth, and used his Mutalisks on Cal's natural, and then made him bring his Archons all the way back in or something. Use their maneuverability a little bit better. I think that might have changed the game a little bit. And yeah, but Cal, by the way, he's got the. I mean, statistically, he's got the second best Protoss versus Zerg in the game behind Bisu. And actually, Bisu has lost a ton of Zerg games lately, so he might have passed him up recently, for all I know, as far as statistics, because they weren't that far apart before. What were we going to say, Clads?
Yeah, I have to say, superlative play from Cal. I really earned a lot of respect from him from this game, and I was glad to have Combat alongside with us for that commentary to provide that keen insight, because I don't think I would have copped on to that +1 thing. So, mad props to Combat for pointing that out to us, because it really changed the way we saw the game.
Definitely.
But I have to ask Moltrap about this. I think Combat's made an interesting point about Kwanro's lack of micro with those Mutalisks, and you've also made the point about how he had options. He didn't have to commit himself as foolhardily as he did. And how much of that is his psychology of play? Because Kwanro, we've seen, is a really, really aggressive player. Usually his micro is something that is very good, and how much of it was just kind of pig-headedness and his aggressive nature, that he just persisted with those Mutalisks, trying to focus that main of Cal where there were photon cannons, where there were Archons waiting, and coursers and support, instead of maybe trying to switch over and either pull his Mutalisks back or send them into his expo to just try and maybe keep Cal pinned back while he built up his forces.
Yeah, again, Diggity and I have kind of talked about this. Kwanro, one of his failings, I think, is that he doesn't adapt very much. Sometimes he is pretty bullheaded, and he just goes along with whatever strategy that he's doing, no matter what happens. And versus Terran, it works for him most of the time, but it doesn't work very well versus Protoss, apparently, because, again, we've seen him do sort of similar things against even the likes of Backhoe. He lost to Backhoe a few months back, kind of in the same fashion. So I think it probably was just him being kind of bullheaded, because that's how he tends to be. Hopefully he'll kind of figure that out and maybe pick that part of his game up in the future.
Yeah, you need to do something special when you're losing to players like Backhoe. That you need to look at yourself and take a long, hard look in the mirror when you're losing to someone like Backhoe, because that really is a player I have very little respect for. But Combat, I want to ask you. This about Kwanro's playstyle. Was it a little bit too obvious for him to make the switch? Because you said it's standard when you see +1 zealots to switch to Mutalisks, and that usually is a good strategy, and most Zerg players do that. I mean, the fact that most players do that, the fact that it's standard, was it a little too obvious? Because it seemed to play right into Cal's strategy.
Yeah, that's where the brilliance from Cal comes in. It is standard play to go Mulus or early lurkers, but that is basically standard because your observer is out really late. That's why some people go lurkers. But yeah, Cal switching to Archon and cannons, that was actually really brilliant. And again, it is standard. Kwanro should have taken that into consideration that it is standard and maybe pulled off something sneaky such as like. Should have got because there's this Zerg build where you can get early +1 also, and it's only like what 2-3 seconds later than Protoss +1, and I mean Carapace when I say Zerg +1, and he should have done something like that because that also or just mass sunkens or something because again Mutalisk is the standard play, but then taking that into consideration, Kwanro should have done something else to make it not so obvious, and then the game definitely would have been different if Kwanro did go sunkens or some other defense, and well yeah that's basically. Kwanro should have actually, yeah, again, he should have done something not so standard because, again, as you saw, it played exactly into Cal's hands, and that's what cost him the game, and that's why Cal ended up winning. But his Protoss vs. Zerg was really superior, and I personally liked Cal's play overall, and his retaliation was really good. I think he just outplayed Kwanro in most parts, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to agree that Kwanro was completely outplayed there, and a real another level of StarCraft play from Cal, just so outfoxing his opponent so deeply, and that's where the beauty of StarCraft lies, where you can have depth of strategy to that level, not just at the surface, but to layers and layers and layers, and really, Kwanro fell for the feint and did the obvious thing. But the last thing I want to ask you in terms of the strategic, we talked about those two expansions going on. I felt really by that stage Kwanro was behind because he didn't because of those loss of those Mutalisks and not doing any effective damage with those Mutalisks. I felt Kwanro was then behind from that stage on. But those two expansions that Kwanro put down that he wasn't able to defend, was it that he simply spread himself too thin too fast? He should have maybe just gone for the one expansion. Maybe he felt that he was behind and he kind of had to do that and didn't have a choice, that he had to go for two expansions because of the loss of his Mutalisk, and he had to take more of a risk than he otherwise might have. But how much, again, credit should go to Cal, because he did get that Zealot scout at that expansion at the 1 o'clock position very early in, that before that expansion could really get up and running and before Kwanro could get any defense there, and that played a huge factor in him being able to take it out, because he got that scout in and then he just basically rushed straight away in with his speeded up upgraded Zealots before Kwanro could get a defense in. So are we being too harsh on Kwanro, at least for that play? Should more credit go to Cal for his scouting and then his choice of strategy, Moltrap?
I'm not sure. I think that I also kind of thought that's what he was doing, is he was behind, and so he was just trying to kind of go balls out, and get a couple expansions, and if they stayed up, then he could have gotten back into it. So I think that's probably where he was going. I don't think he really had a choice at that point, because it was, I think, at that point, 3 base versus 3 base, and like Combat always says, you need to be ahead as Zerg in that sort of situation. So yeah. That's my thoughts on the subject. Combat, did you have anything?
Yeah,
am I getting that right?
Yeah, that's an oft-repeated axiom. Combat, coming back to you with this question that I was just talking about with Moltrap. Do you feel that Kwanro put those 2 bases down? Did he overextend himself because he felt he had no choice, because he felt he was behind and felt that the only way he could do it was to get those 2 expansions and to maybe get some sort of advantage back in the game if he could keep them alive?
Again, Cal scouted that. That was not brilliance, but that was good on Cal's part. But again, I was wrong to say he was greedy for that. But I think again, he was behind and he noticed that. But then if he was behind, he had Hive Tech, and with Hive Tech, all you need to produce is like one Mutalisk, morph that into Guardian, and then get it behind a probe line, and then Dragoons can't hit it. Only Choristers can go that far in range, and that would really harass. And that's basically like 600 gas, 300 minerals for 3 bases, and 1 Guardian per base, and that would actually harass Cal really, really badly. Or you could simply just go Lurker drop and like 2 Lurkers on 1 expansion, take out a lot of probes like that. Again, I was wrong to say he was greedy for that, because he wasn't greedy. He needed those 2 expansions, but I think since I'm pretty sure he did know Cal had a big army, and Cal could have taken it out if it was scouted. And again, Cal's good job on his scouting, but again, I think he should have canceled it or like not invested so much in either of those expansions when he saw that they were scouted. But then again, I think since he noticed that, I think he didn't notice that Cal had such a big army. That's why he got those expansions. But yeah, I think a better option would have been to get, considering he did have Hive Tech, I think a better option would have been to go either a Lurker drop or just one Guardian per base. I've seen that only in a few pro games where Zergs actually go one Guardian per base. And that's actually really effective because it microed properly. Coursers could take it out, but then Scourgers can take out the Coursers, or you can just simply get one Devourer. And again, it's kind of costly, but then that's the only way to come back when you're behind that far, because Protoss will stop mining from their expansions, and that'll actually equalize the economic lead that they're in. But yeah, Billions, good job on Cal for scouting that, and I'm pretty sure if he didn't scout that, and Kwanro did have those expansions for a while and they got to running, then I'm pretty sure the game actually would have shifted in Kwanro's favor, because then 5 expansions Zerg with 5 gas is extremely hard to stop. Ultraling, some people say it's imbalanced versus Protoss, but yeah, it'll be really hard to stop once Ultralisks kick in and the gas actually kicks in. But yeah, I think the main reason he lost was, well, again, the Muralisks for one, and then the expansions were the other. He could have done something else, as I just pointed out, with those rather than those 2 expansions.
Yeah, it wasn't an enormous risk of him to go for those expansions, because he didn't know they would be scouted, and it really could have gone the other way if he hadn't scouted them. But it'll be interesting to see if Kwanro can kind of hopefully pick things up in the future. Like I said, I kind of like him as a player. It'll be good to see him hopefully do well in the future. Okay, so I think we're going to wrap this up then. And like I said, this is Moltrap here, and I've been here commentating with Klazart and Combat X. And
yeah, I just want to give my closing thoughts on it before we do wrap it up. Moltrap, sorry. Yeah, just my closing thoughts on it. Apart from everything else that has been said, I do feel that Kwanro probably didn't have a choice but to go for those 2 expansions. I think his other choice would have been to really commit militarily, and I think that had a lower probability of playing out, since Cal already had a large army going and would have been able to sustain an army for longer. So I think that's why he didn't choose to go for the Lurker drop. Personally, I've got to disagree very strongly with Combat about the Guardian thing. Mainly because I haven't seen it in any pro games, and I think the reason we haven't seen it is because it probably is not that effective at this level. And the other reason I think is it would be a wrong thing to do would be for 2 reasons. First of all, it is a significant investment, not just of resources but also of time, to actually wait for his Spire to morph to Greater Spire. And to then actually get the Guardians up and running would take a lot of time, by which time Cal would basically have overrun him on the map, and he would have not been able to spend the money that he needed to get those expansions up and running, and he would have been then even further behind in terms of his economy and in the game. So I think for that reason, first of all, it wouldn't have worked. Secondly, the layout of the map in Katrina I think makes it quite impossible, because how was he going to get his Guardians into position behind the mineral line of Cal? It would have been impossible for him to actually get a Mutalisk in there within range of those probes to actually morph into Guardian behind those mineral lines. He would have actually had to come in from across the way, and therefore it would have been very easy for Cal to just use an Archon to take those Guardians out before it could get in range of the probes. So I think for those 2 reasons, I think that strategy was not viable, and I think the Lurker strategy he probably felt would have been too all in and not a high chance of success, which is why I felt he went for the hatcheries. But nevertheless, brilliant play by Cal, and those are my closing thoughts on it. And brilliant, and pure thanks to Combat for joining us for this triple commentary.
Yeah, I guess it's right that the Guardians. I actually didn't take the map into consideration. I actually don't know the map really well, surprisingly. But yeah, I guess if the map is played out like that, then Guardians probably wouldn't be such a good strategy. And yeah, again, I guess Lurkers would have been more effective. But then at that point, he was actually really behind. But yeah, I don't think there was the expansions was probably the best thing for him to do. But then that cost him, and so if he had another option, I'm just saying those 2 would probably be the other 2 best options to do. But yeah, it was just good scouts, and basically Cal just had him at that point.
All right, I'm going to call at the end then. Hope you guys enjoyed that, and look forward to more
thanks for listening.
Double and triple commentaries from any various combinations of the 3 of us and Diggity as well. So yeah, thanks for listening.
All right, see ya, guys.